In 1941, a man walked out of hell, not metaphorically, literally. He escaped from a Soviet prison camp in Siberia, where winter temperatures dropped to 50 degrees below zero, where guards shot escapees on sight, and where the nearest civilization lay 4,000 miles away. What followed was not a rescue, not luck, not a miracle. It was 700 miles of frozen wilderness crossed on foot, with no map, no supplies, and no guarantee that freedom even existed anymore. This is the story of Sławomir Rawicz, a man who chose the certainty of death in the wilderness over the slow annihilation of captivity. And what he endured in those months would rewrite the limits of human endurance. Sławomir Rawicz was not a criminal. He was a Polish cavalry officer, 25 years old, arrested by Soviet secret police in 1939 after Poland was carved apart by Nazi Germany and the Soviet Union. His crime, fabricated under torture, was espionage. The sentence was 25 years in a labor camp deep in Siberia, a region so remote it existed beyond maps, beyond mercy, beyond hope. The journey to the camp took months. Prisoners were packed into cattle cars with minimal food and water, transported across frozen landscapes where stopping meant freezing. Many died before arrival. Those who survived found themselves in Camp 303, located near Yakutsk, one of the coldest inhabited places on Earth. Winter temperatures regularly hit -60 degrees Fahrenheit. Exposed skin froze in seconds. Breath turned to ice crystals in the air. The camp operated on a simple principle: work until you die. Prisoners felled timber in the taiga, hauled logs through snow, built roads that led nowhere. Rations were calculated to keep men alive just long enough to be useful. Escape was considered impossible. Guards didn't patrol aggressively because nature did the work for them. The wilderness was the real prison. Anyone who ran would be dead within days. But Rawicz watched. He studied the guards' routines, the gaps in the fence, the direction of the wind, and he noticed something others missed. During blizzards, visibility dropped to zero. Guards retreated indoors. For brief windows, the camp became unwatched. He found 6 other men willing to risk everything. They were not friends, they were survivors who understood that staying meant a slow, frozen death. Together, they began to stockpile scraps, pieces of cloth, stolen food, anything that might buy them one more day outside the wire. Then, one night, during a winter storm so violent that it erased the world, they walked through a gap in the fence. No alarms, no gunfire, just 7 men stepping into a white void where the temperature was 50 degrees below zero and the nearest border lay thousands of miles south. They had made it out, but survival had not even begun. The cold was not like winter. It was a physical force that crushed thought, slowed blood, turned flesh to stone. Within hours, frostbite blackened their fingers. Their breath froze into ice that clung to beards and eyelashes. Every step required a conscious decision to continue. They had no map, no compass, no clear destination. Only one instruction whispered among prisoners: walk south. South meant warmer. South meant away from the Arctic. South meant a border, eventually, if they lived long enough to reach it. The group moved at night to avoid patrols and conserved energy during the day by huddling together in shallow pits dug into snow. Food was nearly non-existent. They chewed on bark,
licked frost from rocks, ate handfuls of snow despite knowing it accelerated hypothermia. Hunger became a constant companion, gnawing at clarity, at reason, at the will to move forward. One man, a Ukrainian farmer, began hallucinating on the third day. He saw villages in the distance, lights that did not exist, warmth that was not there. He wandered off during the night. They found his body the next morning, frozen in a kneeling position, hands outstretched toward nothing. 6 remained. Rawich took unofficial leadership, not through dominance, but through relentless forward motion. When others wanted to stop, to rest, to give up, he kept walking. His logic was brutal and undeniable. Stopping is dying. Moving might also be dying, but at least it's a choice. They crossed frozen rivers, climbed ridges that tore at their feet, stumbled through forests so dense they blocked out the sun. Days blurred into sameness, cold, hunger, exhaustion, repeat. Then, on the 10th day, they saw smoke. A small settlement appeared in a valley below, a handful of wooden structures, signs of human life. It was the first civilization they had seen since escaping. Some wanted to approach, to beg for food, for shelter. Rawich refused. Soviet informants were everywhere. One report, and they would be dragged back to the camp or shot on sight. They circled the village at night, scavenged garbage pits for scraps, and disappeared back into the wilderness before dawn. It was a decision that kept them alive, but it also meant something darker. They could not rely on humanity. The wilderness was their only ally now, and it was trying to kill them. By the time they crossed the first 100 miles, 2 more men had died, one from infected frostbite, another simply stopped walking and refused to move again. 4 remained, and the hardest part was still ahead.
The Siberian taiga is not a forest. It is a living maze, dense and indifferent, stretching for thousands of miles in every direction. Trees grow so close together that sunlight barely penetrates. Moss carpets the ground, hiding rocks, holes, roots that snap ankles without warning. In winter, it becomes a frozen tomb. Rawich and the 3 remaining men pushed deeper into it. Their clothing, stitched together from stolen rags, disintegrated. Their boots, never meant for this distance, split open. They wrapped their feet in bark and cloth, but every step left blood in the snow. Hunger remained the greatest threat. They trapped small animals when possible, ate them raw, because fires attracted attention and wasted time. They gnawed on frozen berries, chewed leather straps, consumed anything that might delay starvation for another day. But hunger does more than weaken the body. It erodes the mind. Suspicion grew among the group. One man accused another of hoarding food. Arguments broke out over direction, over rest stops, over whether to continue at all. On the 40th day, one of the men, a former engineer, sat down in the snow and refused to move. He did not plead. He did not explain. He simply stopped. The others tried to lift him, to force him forward, but he had made his decision. They left him there, not out of cruelty, but out of necessity. Carrying him meant death for everyone. 3 remained. Weeks turned into months. They lost track of time. Days became measured not by calendars, but whether they found food, whether they avoided patrols, whether they woke up at all. Then the terrain shifted.
The taiga thinned. The ground became rockier, steeper. They were approaching mountains. The ridges ahead were not marked on any map they had seen. They had no names, no trails, no indication that humans had ever crossed them. But south lay beyond them, and south was the only direction that mattered. Climbing in their condition should have been impossible. Malnutrition had stripped muscle from their frames. Frostbite had taken fingers and toes. Every movement required more energy than their bodies possessed. But Ravitch climbed, and the others followed, because the alternative was lying down in the snow and never getting up. At the summit, they looked back. Behind them stretched an endless white expanse. The camp, the guards, the life they had known, all of it invisible now, swallowed by distance and snow. Ahead, the land sloped downward, and in the far distance, barely visible through the haze, was something they had not seen in months. Green. Descending the mountains was harder than climbing them. Gravity pulled at exhausted legs, threatened to send them tumbling down slopes that dropped into nothing. Loose rocks shifted underfoot. One misstep meant broken bones or worse. But as they dropped in elevation, the temperature rose. Not warmth, not comfort, but degrees above freezing. Enough to feel sensation returning to numb extremities. Enough to remember what it was like to not be encased in ice. The landscape changed. Snow gave way to patches of exposed ground. Sparse vegetation appeared, then thickened. They were leaving Siberia behind. Then they encountered something unexpected: people. A group of Mongolian herders appeared on horseback, watching the three skeletal figures stumble out of the mountains. The herders did not speak Russian. Ravitch and his companions did not speak Mongolian, but desperation needs no translation. The herders gave them food, not much, but enough. Dried meat, fermented milk, flat bread. The first real meal they had eaten in months. Their stomachs, shrunken and weakened, rejected it at first. They vomited it, ate again, vomited again, until their bodies remembered how to process sustenance. The herders pointed south and gave them directions through gestures. There was a route, not safe, not easy, but passable. One of the three men, a Lithuanian schoolteacher, chose to stay with the herders. He had reached his limit. His feet were blackened stumps. His body could not continue. He thanked Ravitch, shook his hand, and sat down by the fire. Two remained. Ravitch and the last companion, a Latvian farmer named Zaro, continued south, through Mongolian steppes, across deserts where water was scarce and heat replaced cold as the enemy. They walked through dust storms, rationed the food the herders had given them, and kept moving because stopping now, after everything, was unthinkable. Months passed, 6, 7, 8. They lost count. Their bodies were unrecognizable, skin stretched over bone, hair and beards matted and wild, eyes hollowed by deprivation. Then, finally, they saw it. A border post, Chinese soldiers, flags, civilization. They had crossed 4,000 miles. They had survived what should have killed them 100 times over. But survival, they were about to learn, does not mean safety.
When Slavomir Ravitch and Zaro stumbled into that Chinese border post in 1942, they were not celebrated. They were interrogated. The Chinese, wary of Soviet spies and deserters, held them for weeks. Their story sounded impossible. No one escapes Siberia. No one walks that far. No one survives. Eventually, they were released and made their way to India, where British authorities took them in. Rawicz joined the Polish forces in exile and spent the rest of World War II far from the camp that had tried to erase him. After the war, he settled in England. He wrote a book in 1956 called The Long Walk, detailing his escape and journey. It became an international sensation. Readers were captivated by the sheer impossibility of what he claimed to have endured. But questions followed. Historians searched for records, for corroboration, for proof. Soviet files showed no escape from Camp 303 in 1941. Fellow prisoners did not recall Rawicz. Details in his account conflicted with geography and timelines. Some called it exaggeration, others called it fiction. Debates continue to this day. But here is what cannot be disputed. Men did escape Soviet labor camps. Many died trying. A few succeeded. And the physical evidence of survival in Siberia exists in scattered graves, in documents that were destroyed or hidden, in oral histories passed down by those who witnessed the impossible. Whether every detail of Rawicz's account is literal truth or reconstructed memory shaped by trauma, the core remains. A man chose to walk into certain death rather than accept captivity. He crossed a distance that should have killed him, and he lived to tell the story. That choice, made in darkness and cold and hunger, remains one of the most compelling acts of defiance ever recorded. Not defiance against a system, but against the limits of what a human being can endure. If stories like this challenge you, move you, or make you question what resilience truly means, consider supporting the channel. Like the video, subscribe, and join us for more true stories of survival and the extraordinary limits of the human spirit.